Hello and welcome to the Run Testers. My name's Nick and this is our full multi-test review of the Brooks Ghost Max. So the Ghost Max is Brooks' first Max cushion shoe, it's fair to say. We had the Hyperion Max come out last year, but that is still quite a low-profile shoe, if anything. The Max is a big shoe. It goes right up to 39mm at the heel, and then it's 33mm at the forefoot for a 6mm drop. It's £140 or $150, which is relatively good value for a Max cushion shoe, and it weighs in at 304 grams or 10.7 ounces. So obviously Ghost is in the name, and the Brooks Ghost 15 is a very popular shoe, and there's some similarities here, but really the feel of the shoe has been changed quite a lot by the stack height and indeed the lower drop. The Ghost 15 is a much higher drop shoe. It's one of the few 10mm, 12mm even drop shoes left on the market, and obviously the Ghost goes more into the current trend of big high stacks with rockers and lower drops. So the stack is DNA Loft V2 cushioning, which is a solid enough foam. It's not the Loft V3 foam we see on the Glycerin, which is nitrogen infused, but it's a nice soft foam. Like I say, it's a rocker shoe. It's got the Brooks' Glide Roll rocker just to ease your transition from heel to toe. It's got a big broad base, sidewalls of foam, significant heel counter as well, all to aid stability given the high stack height you have here. You've got an engineered mesh upper, which is pretty nicely padded around the heel and tongue as you expect that classic Brooks step-in comfort, and then good outsole coverage from rubber in all the key areas, groove running down the middle again to try and position your foot in the right way to make sure that it's nice and stable, and then like I say, a thick layer of rubber to make sure it grips well and is durable.
So this is the Brooks Ghost 15 and this is the Ghost Max. Now interestingly, they sent me a size 7 in the 15 and a 6 in the Max. And actually it wasn't until I kind of thought, well, they're a tiny bit tight in the toe box, but sort of just I'm slightly up near the end more than I normally would do. But actually I've run in them plenty and not had any issues at all. So I would say probably they size slightly large, but it's hard to tell because I don't have my normal size. That said, plenty wide enough that way for me, so I've not been knocking at all, and again top to bottom plenty of room in that toe box, and that fits with the fact that they are just generally quite plush. You can see they're a similar level of plushness, but with the Max you've also got the more cushioned laces and the slightly more structured lace lock in there to allow for that fact. The general feeling on this is a lot of plushness and comfort and plenty of space for your feet to breathe, which fits with that massive old stack height that you can see there that we'll come on to.
So the Ghost Max fit well, true to size for me. I found the fit quite snug. It was hugging rather than roomy, particularly in the toe box around the little pinkies, but I have quite high volume feet, and I found there was enough flex in the uppers across the top to avoid it getting restrictive and problematic. I got good lockdown across the midfoot. I had really good heel hold from these nicely padded heel collars, and I had no problems in my regular running shoe size, and I would recommend going true to size in these shoes.
So fit for me on the Ghost Max has been absolutely fine in my UK size 8. That's generally what I go for in Brooks shoes, and I've had no issues on the Ghost Max here. Reminds me a lot of the fit of something like the Glycerin 20, and from that point of view I was really happy with the amount of space up front in the toes. Didn't feel too long. You get a good nice hold in the midfoot as well. I've had no rubbing in terms of the heel here either. You've got these kind of spongy laces which is definitely built for kind of sitting more snug on the top of your foot. One minor thing I would probably say is that I would like to have a tongue maybe that's a little bit wider, and sometimes I've had to kind of spread it out after I've kind of laced up as well. But other than that, very minor, very good overall. Definitely worked on my narrow feet. Potentially if you've got wider feet you may want to look at a wider fit option in the Ghost Max.
So I've got no concerns at all about the fit of the Brooks Ghost Max. It fits me very well in my normal running shoe size. I've got UK 9 here, which is a US 10. It is very comfortable, loads of padding around the heel and the tongue. Like I say, it's classic Brooks step-in comfort feel, and overall no problems with the fit. Same size I have for the Ghost 15 and the Glycerin 20 with no concerns.
So the fit for me in the Brooks Ghost Max, I'm a size 8 in the UK. This is a size 8. It's a very comfortable shoe. I'd definitely stay to my size in this shoe. I wouldn't say there's loads of room in the forefoot in front of the toe. There's probably a bit less than some people would want. I definitely didn't have any issues with it at all, so I would stick to my size in this shoe. Also found the upper had quite a bit of space in the forefoot. It's not the widest shoe around, but it's definitely a little bit roomier than a lot of the shoes that I've got. So I'd stay to my size, and it's a very comfortable plush upper. Whenever a Max cushion shoe comes out, I get very, very excited because I love cushioning. I love a nice, soft, bouncy ride. So I was never really a big fan of the original Ghost series, none of them. I've always found them to be a bit dull. The midsole is always a bit hard. But I said the same thing about the New Balance Fresh Foam 1080 V11 and 12. But my favourite cushion shoe is the New Balance More V3 and V4. And although the midsole foam hasn't changed in those shoes, because there's a lot more of it, it changes the ride of the shoe and it feels a lot softer, and just like a max cushion shoe as you'd expect. So I kind of hoped that the Brooks Ghost Max would be a similar thing, where by adding a bit more foam into it, it actually becomes a little bit softer, a little bit more enjoyable for those longer and easy runs. It doesn't. It feels very, very similar to the Ghost to me, and to be honest, having more of that midsole foam in doesn't really make much of a difference for me in the ride. It's still quite a firm ride. It's still a pretty dull ride. There's not really any softness in it. There's not really any rebound on it, and yeah, I didn't really get a lot from it on those runs. I didn't dislike it when I was running. I did about 50k in it so far. I didn't dislike it on those runs. I just didn't really get a lot from it. And when you're wearing a max cushion shoe, you kind of want to get something from that cushioning that justifies the max cushioning label that it's got on it. What I found is that for the runs that I was doing, and I was really doing between about 5 mile and up to about 10 mile runs in this shoe. And what I found is that it's just sort of a solid, stable shoe. There's no real benefit to me for having that max cushioning in it. I don't think it makes a big difference to the original Ghost. Has a little bit of a nicer rocker action than the Ghost, so it does feel easier to have a nice flowing, easy run, if you will. But it definitely doesn't feel like you're getting a lot from that midsole foam. I did do a fartlek session in this yesterday, and one thing I would say, one positive point about the shoe is that because that midsole is a little bit firmer, I did feel that you could pick up the pace a bit more in it. I definitely wouldn't run for long distances at speed in this shoe. I think it's a bit too cumbersome for that. But for shorter reps of that fartlek, and they were about, I was doing about 3 minute 50, 45 second reps, 3 minute 50 kilometers. And it felt pretty good for that. Like, the midsole foam is a little bit more responsive because it's a little bit harder, and it did feel like it could pick up the pace a little bit on those. But as I say, I definitely wouldn't use this for any sort of speed work or anything like that. It's just got a little bit more speed in it, I think, just because that midsole is a little bit firmer. Other things I would say about it is I did find the bottom quite slippy. I've been running out in the wet in Brighton over the past couple of weeks, and it has been very... there's been a lot of water on the ground, and I did find that I didn't feel very comfortable in the shoe when I was going over some slippy bits. It did feel like this is a little bit plasticky. It didn't have a lot of grip on those sections. On the dry sections, it's absolutely fine. It feels great. I would say this doesn't feel like there's a lot of rubber on for a max cushion shoe on this on the Ghost Max, but the midsole is probably a little bit sturdier than what you're going to get on a lot of shoes, so it probably doesn't need to be. It's a pretty tough midsole foam. So overall, I would say it's fine. It's stable. It feels a bit better than the Ghost for me, but ultimately, when you're comparing with lots of other max cushion shoes out there, I just don't think it delivers many interesting benefits.
So I know the Brooks Ghost is a popular and well-loved shoe. It is a shoe for people that fear change and want the same shoe over and over again, and there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. I totally get that. It's just, for me, it hasn't been the most memorable shoe I've run in, and I think with the Brooks Ghost Max, I think there's characteristics of this shoe that makes it designed for the same types of runs as the Brooks Ghost. I just think it delivers it in a more memorable way, and I've definitely had nicer runs in the Brooks Ghost Max than I have with the Brooks Ghost. Now, I put that down to a few things. I think the first thing, we had to talk about, obviously, this kind of stackered DNA Loft V2 foam. Now, it is not the most lively, energetic, exciting kind of foam or midsole that you're getting here on a shoe, but I do think it means you're getting a good level of protection and a good level of cushioning. So if you want to run long in a shoe and run, regularly in it, then you've got a good level of protection there. Now, that is spread across a very stable base. If you're looking for a kind of max cushion daily trainer that is stable, then that is definitely what I would associate with the Brooks Ghost Max. Now, you're not getting the most lively kind of midsole here. You're getting this kind of, or midsole foam, I should say, the glide roll rocker, the kind of that really gives you the kind of the transitions in this shoe, is pretty nice. It is, it's not the most aggressive, but it's nice enough to kind of get you through those transitions in a really kind of smooth way. Now, I still think it is best designed for kind of easy, comfortable runs. When I tried to pick the pace up in this shoe, I've almost wanted it to be a little bit lighter. I think, as I said, I don't think you're getting massive amounts out of the midsole and the midsole foam in general, but that rocker does ensure that if you want to slightly pick the pace up, it does feel a little bit more, achievable than it is on the Brooks Ghost. Outsole wise, absolutely fine. There's a lot of rubber here. It's what you'd expect to see on a Brooks Ghost, that people are going to be putting a lot of time in this shoe, and I don't think it's going to be any different on the Brooks Ghost Max. There's a lot of rubber. I've gone through, we're at a time we're getting, it's autumn, kind of wet, boggy leaves, and it's been absolutely fine from that point of view in terms of grip and traction. So yeah, for me, the Brooks Ghost Max, definitely more memorable running it in this shoe than the Brooks Ghost, but I still think it's designed for the same types of runs, easy, comfortable runs. Maybe the scope to slightly pick the pace up, but I think ultimately that's probably taking it out of really what it's best suited for.
Most of my runs in this have been easy runs. I also did a coach and running fitness course where I wore these, and we ended up having to do an 8-minute tempo run round in circles around a sports hall, which is a good test, it turns out, for stability because it was quite tight turns. And actually the grip as well, you can see all that grip underneath with that outsole. There's plenty of grip there and they feel really stable, so I had no issues despite that massive stack height of 39mm. So that was really good. Stability not a problem, grip not a problem, wet or dry or squeaky slidey sports hall. As I've worn them more and more, it feels like that that foam that they've got, the DNA Loft, V2 foam, has really kind of warmed up a bit. So I think that's really interesting. I think maybe they will warm into it even more. I'll be interested to see how that goes. They didn't really, make me feel like I had loads of pop when I did any strides or anything like that, but that's really not what these shoes are designed for. They've got the rocker, again, I didn't really notice it much to start with, but then they also have a 6mm drop, so that's quite a low drop for something like this shoe. So, yeah, interesting one with that. I think I would use them only for sort of easy day runs probably, but maybe once the kind of foam's warmed into it a bit more, maybe a bit more, I think I'd be fine, taking them out on any kind of terrain, to be honest. I feel like they'd cope with that, no problem at all. The lack of road feel under my foot was something which slightly bothered me. Now, I know the whole point of these is to have a really easy day shoe and to have max cushioning so you're not stressing your foot at all. But I think I've experienced that with something like the Cloud Monster or the Cloud Stratus, and I've not sort of felt quite so removed from the act of running. It's really hard to explain, but that's something that, yeah, I can't quite put my finger on, but it just felt very much like it was trying to make you not feel like you were running.
Now, in my tests, I've run 30 kilometres, so not as far as I'd usually run in testing, but I've managed to get a good mix of paces. That included an easy 10 miler, about 90 minutes on feet, and a run with marathon pace intervals. Plus, I've taken them on road and some light off-road river paths, the usual things that I run here in London. Fresh out the box, I think the Ghost Max felt really good. The step in comfort here is great. These are snug from the heel hold, with the big padded kind of heel collars, through the midfoot into the toe box as well. But if you don't mind a heavier shoe, there's a really decent disappearing feel on the foot, in part I think because they feel lighter on the foot than they do on the scales. Now, once I got moving, I didn't find the big stack of Brooks DNA Loft V2 particularly bouncy or springy, though it's not dead or dull either. It strikes a really happy balance between cushioned and responsive, and I found that the glide rolled rocker made for smooth transitions, though more so on fresh legs. When I was tired, I found them a little soft for my tastes. I'm being really picky because it wasn't hugely problematic on that run, I was told, but I'm not a huge fan of shoes that sink and make you almost wait or work for that return. And when my form dropped a bit and I was running heavier, maybe a bit further back on my heels, I had to work a bit harder to get through that transition in the Ghost Max. I felt a little bit more anchored. And overall, the weight and that slightly softer midsole edge means that I'd be more inclined to use this for runs up to marathon pace. Anything faster than that, I'd shoot for something lighter, punchier and more agile. The other thing that I noticed in my test, it's been wet here in London, and was the grip. I ran on wet roads and also chopped up kind of sloppy river paths, and they felt really reliable underfoot. That was quite notable.
So I'm not a huge fan of the Ghost Classic. We can call it the Ghost 15. I found it's just a slightly meh shoe, and I was worried that by just adding a load more foam, that's a similar foam into the shoe, the Brooks Ghost Max would also be a bit kind of meh. But actually, after 60k in the shoe, I can say that I really do like it quite a lot. I think it's a very good max cushion shoe that's nice and naturally stable, has a really good rocker, and is not the most versatile shoe in the world, but for cruising through your easy runs, it does a really good job. Like I say, the rocker is really well designed. I generally like rockered shoes, and this is a good one. It's not the most aggressive at the forefoot, as you'd expect for a shoe that's mainly designed for easy cruising, but it does create a nice, smooth, fluid ride, makes a shoe feel a bit lighter and smaller than it is, and it actually means there is some versatility there. I've done one run moving from around 430 a k pace down to 345 a k pace, which is kind of an easy to steady pace, classic daily training run for me, and it felt okay in this shoe. Like, I'd prefer to do it in a slightly lighter shoe probably, but if you are using a big cushion shoe like this as your main daily trainer, the Ghost Max is a solid option for those kind of runs. Probably the run I enjoyed most in it was a half marathon cruise on a Sunday morning, classic Sunday run, start off nice and easy, move through the gears a little bit, but keep the pace nice and gentle throughout, and it just ticked along really well. Like I say, it doesn't feel like such a big shoe, the rocker's well designed, got into a sync with it really easily, and it felt just really comfortable cruising through those long miles with good protection of the legs. The cushioning is soft but not squishy. Like I say, it's quite stable, feels resilient, and at the end of a long run like that, it still feels the same. It's not started to press down a bit and lose a bit of its bounce or anything like that. It's not a huge amount of bounce there, full stop. It's quite it's not the most lively foam for sure, but it feels good, gives you a nice stable platform upon which you can do your running without too many concerns, with the rocker really being the predominant feature I felt on the run. Also, one last thing I noticed is the outsole has been really good for me. Like, the first run I did in it was absolutely tipping it down, like really horrible rain, and it was flooded pavements. And then pretty much all the runs I've done in it have been on wet pavements with a layering of autumnal leaves, slick leaves on them, and the grip has been fantastic. No concerns at all. That's exactly the same actually when I was testing the Ghost 15. It's a good outsole, nice and reliable for winter running. So that's another big plus. So I'd say that the Brooks Ghost Max is one of the top options available for those who are seeking a pretty stable max cushion shoe like this. It's good value too as well for a maximally cushioned shoe. Lots of them stray way over £150 or dollars, and this is coming in not much above the classic Brooks Ghost price. I think it's smoother and more fun to run in than the Ghost 15, and it's just as versatile. It's a little bit softer, more comfortable, more protective, and like I say, more fluid and smooth on the run. So I certainly prefer it to the Ghost 15. Lacks a little bit of the bounce you get from the Glycerin 20, but is a bit more soft and comfortable than the Glycerin 20, which is surprising. The Glycerin was always the most comfortable shoe on the market for me, and actually now that stands out as like quite a versatile daily trainer shoe, and this is the highly cushioned, soft, easy run shoe in Brooks's lineup. So they do slightly different jobs I think now, but I do think the Ghost Max has that nice rockered ride. The Glycerin has more of a snap to it, but gives you a bit more of a bounce back from the foam in its midsole. So other max cushion shoes to compare to, the Asics Gel-Nimbus 25 I think is probably the best shoe in this category overall maybe, and I think it is a better shoe than the Ghost Max. I'd say it's got similar nice fluid ride. The foam is a bit softer but also bouncier. It feels very good for long runs in particular. I've done a lot of long runs in the Gel-Nimbus 25. I think all round that's just probably a slightly better shoe that does a very similar job to the Ghost Max. And I think if you were weighing them up at the same price, I think I would certainly lean towards the Gel-Nimbus, but Gel-Nimbus and RRP is a fair bit more expensive, so that might be something that comes into play. But I do think the Gel-Nimbus has really nailed down this kind of highly cushioned, max cushioned cruiser shoe. It's got similar versatility to the Ghost Max. I think the foam just feels a little bit better underfoot for any kind of run. Another one is the Saucony Triumph 21, which is a bit firmer, but I think that is a slightly more versatile shoe. If you're looking at a max cushion shoe to use as an all-rounder for all your training and that kind of thing, I think the Triumph 21 is a better option for that. I think it's even pretty good long distance race option, whereas the Ghost Max does steer more towards those easy runs for me. Another option is the Vomero 17 from Nike. That's not notably higher drop. Actually, Triumph 21 as well. Both have kind of snappier, more traditional rides, whereas with the Ghost Max, you definitely feel that rocker on the run. Again, you get slightly more bounce from the Vomero from that ZoomX foam in its midsole, but I don't think it's any more versatile than the Ghost Max. I'd lean towards the Ghost Max myself out of those two. New Balance 1080 V13 hit the market recently. That's a lot softer than this shoe for sure. It's a very soft shoe. Like, it's too soft for me. I think if you want all-out softness for short, easy runs in particular, it's brilliant, and I'd highly recommend it, but I actually prefer the feeling of the Ghost Max to have that softness balanced with a little bit more stability and solidity underfoot, which just gives me a platform I feel a bit more confident in when running and enjoy more certainly for long runs. It's still very comfortable, but it's just not that really squishy feeling of the 1080. So I think the shoe actually that probably stands out the most I want to compare it to is the Puma Magnify Nitro 2, which is probably my favourite max cushion shoe. I think actually, well, the Gel-Nimbus 25 is, I don't know, it's close between those two, but I prefer the Magnify Nitro to myself just because it's a fair bit cheaper, and I do like Puma's Nitro foam. We've got a big stack of it on that shoe, and it does give you a little bit of bounce back. It creates quite a light shoe all round. I do think that's fairly versatile for a max cushion shoe, so that's probably the one I pick up because it's also quite cheap, and that's the other big thing going for the Ghost Max. But actually, the Magnify Nitro 2 I think is even cheaper, so I do prefer that. But that again has a more traditional ride, flatter ride with the higher drop, and then you get the rocker on the Ghost Max, which is really nice. I do think if you like a rockered ride, it's the best value max cushion shoe out there. It's a really good option. So yeah, all in all, I think it's a really good shoe. Does its job well. There are loads of other shoes in this category though. It's a very, very competitive category. Probably be looking around now and finding some of these in sales. I think the Gel-Nimbus 25 is in sales for Black Friday, for example, and then I'd probably go for it, or the Puma Magnify Nitro. But if you do want a nice stable max cushion cruiser, the Brooks Ghost Max does a really good job in my opinion.
So for my verdict then, well, I barely recognise myself these days. Even when I'm running slow, I'm normally not the biggest fan of big, heavier, max pillowy cushion shoes that put a lot of shoe on the foot. I tend to reach for something cushioned but more sprightly, something maybe like the Cloud Surfer 7, even the Mach 5, which is lighter. But I've been enjoying the New Balance 1080, and I have to say I'm impressed with the Ghost Max. The way I'd sum it up is that they offer reliable, steady comfort. Now for me, these get close to the Asics Gel-Nimbus 25 and the New Balance 1080 V13 for that type of plush comfort cushioned ride with a softer edge. I think I prefer the New Balance 1080, just a little bit lighter, but the Brooks Ghost Max are 100% the kind of shoe I can happily use to eat long runs and cover easy low heart rate miles, you know, those really easy heads up runs. I wouldn't use them for my fastest miles, but I think there's enough response here to cover some of the faster efforts that you might do. And I actually think that some runners might even enjoy the cushioned but responsive ride for marathons. If you need more protection when you get into longer time on feet, the Ghost Max definitely offer that. Brooks has done a really good job here of creating a max cushion shoe. And when you look at the price, £140 in the UK, $150 in the US, it's a chunk cheaper than the close rivals. It's definitely one to look at as a potential alternative to the New Balance 1080 V13 or the Asics Gel-Nimbus 25. We'll have reviews of those on the channel soon, but for me this one's a thumbs up.
So my verdict on the Brooks Ghost Max is that it's fine, it's a solid shoe, it's definitely preferable to the Ghost, which I just find to be a very dull shoe, but also as a max cushion shoe it doesn't really warrant the extra foam in it. I don't think there's any real benefits to having this shoe over something that isn't a max shoe, because it's quite a lot firmer. The extra foam doesn't really do anything. It doesn't make it softer, doesn't make it bouncier for me. But there is a nice little rocker in it. So for me, I think it's fine. It's a solid shoe, but again, I just think there's lots of better options out there. Things like the New Balance More V4 and stuff like that. Yeah, they just have a little bit more to them. And although this is a more cost-effective shoe, it's quite a bit cheaper than a lot of max cushion shoes out there at the moment. I would probably pay a little bit more just to have a shoe that just does something a little bit more than what this shoe does. But not bad, just not great either.
So my verdict on the Brooks Ghost Max is that this is a reasonably priced max cushion daily training shoe that I still think is suited to the same types of runs as the Brooks Ghost, but ultimately I think gives you something a little bit more memorable, something slightly more agile, not massively, but I do think maybe if you want to run slightly quicker in the shoe, then you could potentially do it a lot more comfortably in this compared to the Ghost. I do just wish there was a better level of foam here to kind of really elevate what else you're getting here in the Ghost Max. Now, I think of shoes to compare this to, I think the most obvious one would be the Hoka Clifton 9, which is definitely a lot softer, I would say, and I wouldn't say is as agile as the Brooks Ghost Max. I don't think there's a massive amount in it, but I do think it has a slight edge on the Clifton 9. And when you're spending a little bit more money, I think you're looking at things like the New Balance 1080 V13, which again feels softer, has a nice rocker to it as well, and it's a shoe that I've enjoyed running in probably the same types of runs as the Brooks Ghost Max. And then you've got something like the Saucony Triumph 21, which I definitely feel like is a more versatile kind of cushion, kind of daily trainer shoe. So if you wanted to spend a little bit more money, I wanted something that could hold up a little bit better on slightly quicker, more up-tempo paces, then that's definitely a shoe that can do that. But this is a good start, a good evolution of the Brooks Ghost. I think a step in the right direction for Brooks overall, and it is, as I said, sits well at the price that it's at. And yeah, as I said, I definitely I enjoyed my time more in the Brooks Ghost Max than I have in the Brooks Ghost. And I'd like to see where it goes with this next, because I think ultimately this is probably where the Ghost range needs to go.
My verdict then. One thing which I didn't actually mention as much in the run test was just, I find this shoe quite firm, which for something which is meant to be max cushioned, I was quite surprised by. Which is why actually I'd probably go for something like the Cloud Monster out of the shoes that I've experienced more than this, because it's a similar firmness actually. It's still got that quite big stack. It's quite a lot lighter. It's still a low drop. It's still got a rocker, and yet you can do kind of tempos as well as long, easy runs and things like that in it. However, if you love max cushion shoes and you just want like a big chunk of foam between you and the road, and you want something which actually feels quite light given how heavy it is, which isn't super heavy, but just it's got a big chunk of foam, then this shoe is great. It's super comfortable. It's very plush. You can't go wrong with it in that it's got plenty of grip. I just think that there's probably plenty of other shoes out there that do the max cushioned easy day shoe thing, and this doesn't have anything else to add to its arsenal that I'm aware of, although max cushioned is not my kind of normal go-to, so just bear that in mind.
That's it. That's our review of the Brooks Ghost Max. Let us know what you think in the comments below. Please do like and subscribe, ring the little bell, and we'll see you next time.